So today it's a little cold and windy outside. It snowed a little bit this morning and it's been cloudy all day. So I don't know, it's just kind of a brisk chill that I just didn't really feel like going outside and making a video. So I know a lot of people like me sitting in front of the wood stove. The sun's starting to peek out, so that might be good for the solar panels. Thought I'd make a rant video. Now typically I do my rant videos out in the woods or at the wood pile. Taking you out to the wood pile. No, today it's not really a rant video, but I don't know how else to categorize it. It's about how folks think I'm not very smart at doing what I'm doing, or fake, because obviously I'm doing it this way, that must not be real. I thought I would take a minute to explain what off-grid is really about. Now, first of all, my definition is pretty narrow with off-grid. I know I get a lot of these people, you got to be out in the mountains in the middle of nowhere with 50,000 acres around you. That's off-grid. Nah, not to me. Off-grid is just no power from the power company and water. And I believe that I'm like 95% self-sufficient. If, SHTF, because apparently you have to be prepared for the end of the world when you're living off-grid, SHTF. I think I would adapt pretty quickly with that. And there's 4 things that I think that you have to survive SHTF: food, water, shelter, and defense. Some of the things that I have noticed, especially from new off-grid YouTube channels, they always go in there with this attitude that they've got it all covered, and they always miss the one thing that I think you need the most. And I actually think when I say food, water, shelter, and defense, there is a number 1 priority, and then the rest of it just kind of falls into place. You got to have water. Water is so essential, and I've talked about this in the video specifically. The whole video was about water. It's so hard to find if you don't have it. It's always on your mind. You're always trying to figure out how to get clean water. So don't let water be your last thought process. I told you about a off-grid channel who thought they were going to have it delivered, but the truck ended up getting stuck, so they can't get it delivered. So now they're chasing around and getting it from neighbors and different things. There was this huge channel that talked about they collect rainwater, but the thing I've never heard them say is, if you're going to collect rainwater, you got to have a building big enough to collect that water. So if you're just moving on a property like we did, we moved onto this property, set the camper down, we had no roof to collect the rainwater from. I don't think they did either. As a matter of fact, I know they didn't. They went around to their friends getting water. If you're having to go beg for water, I really struggle with the thought that that is off-grid. Now, people will make the comparison. Well, you get propane. I do get propane, but I don't need it. Propane is an absolute convenience around here. We were just talking about this today. If SHTF were to ever happen, what would we do to cook food? Well, pretty much we would just can our food. This is a can of chicken, and I can literally open this up, put a fork in it, and start eating it. I don't need it warmed. So the only thing I'd have to worry about is how to get it canned, which brings me to firewood. I am actually surprised how few people realize how dry firewood is so far superior to running wet firewood. I remember when I first got here this first year, you'll remember I struggled. I had wet firewood, but it was our first year here. So we spent the entire summer getting enough firewood to get us through the winter time. Then we got that tiny house built right around January time frame. We moved into it, and the firewood was still wet. It was disastrous. We had a fire in the chimney because of the creosote. If I were to can, I would take this dry firewood, and so what you do is you get your rocket stove. I've showed you our rocket stove out there before, and you would just feed this all day long. She'd probably be splitting, and I'd be sitting there making sure that the canner didn't get too hot or too cold, making sure it's jiggling the whole time. It would be an all-day process, but it can be done. But I see people trying to start a fire. I mean, this thing just lights like a match, and they're all day long trying to keep that fire going. But you have dry firewood, you don't have to do any of that. Now, I heard somebody say, well, just get yourself a solar kiln, so it will dry in just 3 or 4 weeks. Why not just let it sit 3 years? I mean, I'm not in a hurry. Cut down firewood, it dries for 3 years. I watched one YouTuber who specifically called out my name. I guess it showed up on my feed because Little House Off Grid was in his video. He was talking about how Little House Off Grid has this IBC tank full of water. And he uses a water pump, an RV water pump, which is the cheapest thing. It's not even really an RV pump. What we have is a kind of a something that you use for a sprayer on the back of your lawnmower. It's 3 gallons a minute, 60, 80 psi. You can regulate the pressure though. So he had the same setup I did. Now, I have always said if you're going to have an IBC tank, that you need to take the water from the bottom of the tank to feed the pump. He didn't listen to this. So obviously Little House Off Grid has no idea what he's talking about, even though my pump is hooked up to the bottom of the tank. If you take the suction hose and you stick it down into the tank, it's not going to do anything. These pumps don't suck water. It requires that it be gravity fed into the pump. Now, some RV pumps might. This pump is $30. Why go out and spend a bunch of money on an RV pump that's going to wear out just as fast as these pumps, or freeze and break, or whatever the case might be? Let's go buy cheap. That way, if it does break, I'm not out a bunch of money, and just stick a hose down at the bottom. But he struggled with this all day long. Working on this video, just mad that it wasn't pumping, and he's hitting the hose, and finally he figures out, oh, there's no water in the hose. What's going on? The pump must be broke. When I started our off-grid, it was actually that we were going to travel as nomads, and we were setting up a pop-up camper, and I spent weeks and weeks and weeks setting up this pop-up camper. And one of the things we had to worry about was how we were going to have a shower with a pump. So I bought the pump that I currently have, and I did the same thing. Stuck the hose down in the bucket. I used a 5-gallon bucket and realized it didn't work. But you know what the neat thing was? Is if I got thirsty or if I needed a shower, I could literally go in the house, get a glass of water or take a shower, and come back out the next day and work on my project some more. Or I could order parts, or I could go to a hardware store. But when you're out there in the middle of Arizona, you don't have these options. So you go in with an idea, oh, I know how everything works. That off-grid guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. No, pumps suck. You don't have to have a... And then he was completely taken back. I don't even know if he ever, apologized with all the cussing. I don't remember. I think he finally gave up. I haven't seen his channel in a long time. Now, one of the things people seem to think I struggle with, which I don't, is my IBC tank freezing in the winter. That has never been a problem. I talk about freezing water, but never the IBC tank. What freezes is my water pump and all the lines that come from the IBC tank into the house. All that will freeze. Has frozen about -4 degrees. However, since everybody hears what they want to hear, they always have this suggestion of how to keep the tank warm. Now, I have ventilation up here with a fan that blows air around all the plumbing that I have going straight out to the IBC tank. So it can get up to about 110 degrees up there at the ceiling. So it's sucking at 110 degrees, and by the time it gets out to the tank, it's about 50 degrees. And it keeps the pump warm and all the pipes warm. But again, I never really had a problem with the tank. This, in my mind, is exactly what I need to solve the problem of my pump freezing. Since they don't hear what I'm saying, and they say, well, here's how you keep your tank from freezing up. What they want me to do is run copper piping, I guess somehow in behind the wood stove here and up. So it's just a little flexible tube. It probably isn't a 1/4 inch diameter. And then they want me to coil it around the chimney and then out to the tank and back into the tank. So what it would do is suck water from the tank, circle it around, and back out to the tank. The reason this works is because heat rises. What would happen is as the tube is heating up, it would start to draw the water up. As it got up to the top of the chimney, it would go out to the tank, fill the tank up that it's just taking water out of. So it's a constant rotation of water. Once again, people don't think about everything. They don't think about all the things that go into this suggestion. If you want to do that, your wood stove would have to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because if it didn't, your tube would freeze out there by the tank. Since I only run my stove a few hours a day, there would be nothing happening in that tube. It would just be sitting there, so the tube would freeze. The problem is, as soon as the chimney heats back up, the tube would start to gain pressure. the water inside would start to expand from steam and evaporation, and would start to expand. And you're going to burst the pipe. So now you got water splashing all over this. Again, people only go in thinking half cocked. They don't think about the whole thing, the whole system. What happens if you go out for a while and your wood stove dies down? One of the things I always hear about, because we have this little propane water heater, is you need a solar water heater. And I understand what that is. I mean, it's not a hard concept. You can actually buy bags for camping. It's just a black bag. You put water in it, you set it in the sun, it heats up. Probably about 120, 130 degrees. So, you know, put this on top of your, everybody wants to put things on top of the roof. Your roof isn't going to hold that much weight. I've already talked about that in a previous video. They want me to put 2,000 pounds of water in my attic. It just isn't going to hold. So you're going to put a water heater up on the top of the roof. Of course, that means I got to get rid of the trees, which keeps the house cool in the summertime because we don't have air conditioning. Then you paint the tank black, and that would heat up. Okay, that's great. What are you going to do on a cloudy day like this one when it's below freezing? You're going to have the same problem that you assume I have with the IBC tank. It will freeze because there is no insulation on that. There would be a good portion of the winter you wouldn't have any hot water. So a better solution would be put a big pot on top of the stove. Remember, I like this about 3 times a day in the wintertime. Put a big pot on the stove, put water in it, it heats up to almost boiling. There's hot water. It's free, it's easy. I always use the phrase KISS, keep it simple, silly. It's supposed to be stupid, but if you're overcomplicating your system, you're never going to succeed. I know that there's all these theories and great ideas. I hear this one about using the smoke. You can use smoke to run your generator. Well, that's great if you can get it to work all the time. It's going to clog up, it's going to be constant problems. The theory is really cool. But in reality, it's just going to be hard to run. People bring up goats all the time. If you want to live off grid, you got to get rid of that lawnmower. That takes gasoline. That's not off grid. Again, I'm a fake because I don't live off grid. Goats, you don't even have to feed. They'll just eat around the place and keep the place nice and clean. It's perfect. So the other day, it was implied that I was stupid because I don't have goats. He didn't say stupid, but he definitely made a huge suggestion that I didn't know what I was doing since I don't have goats. So I replied back, so what's your suggestion for the wintertime? In the wintertime, grass doesn't grow, and it's my understanding that goats die when they starve to death. Oh, I didn't think about that. Well, of course you didn't think about it, because you're so willing to suggest that someone else is stupid instead of just thinking the whole thing through. I mean, we are literally heading into winter right now, and you're talking about goats. And you don't think, oh, what happens when there's snow all over the yard? What do they eat then? So one person actually replied back and said, well, just bale your hay. You can bale your hay. Okay, great. The whole idea behind this conversation is you don't want to use gasoline or a lawnmower. So what are you going to bale hay with? Oh, I know. You want me to go out there and sickle blade? Well, no, I'm not going to go through all that. So I have a couple suggestions that I would like to point out. Don't do this lifestyle out of necessity. I said that as a nomad too. Carolyn and I voluntarily went and did the nomadic life. We had a good savings account. We had a business plan on how we were going to make money. And we did it for as long as we enjoyed it. Once we stopped enjoying it, we stopped doing it. But there were so many people that went out into the van life because some YouTuber told them to. And they're miserable. I know of at least 3 people that have died in the desert of Arizona because they had nothing. They were completely lost in a van that doesn't run, or they have cancer, or they ran out of water. It's just a bad idea. Don't let some YouTuber convince you to do this out of necessity. You do it because you want to live your dreams. And then secondly, about age. I would say that an age can be an issue for the first few years that you start living off grid. Carolyn and I are getting older, but all the big projects are done. The solar panels are set up, the chickens are already set up, the house is built, the water system is established, the well has been repaired, and we have 15 years of firewood. If we need more firewood in the future, we can get 3 truckloads a year, and we can literally work on all that firewood for a year or 2 or 3. We're not in a big hurry. We can split it, stack it when it's convenient. That's what we did over here. We'd go outside for 10 or 15 minutes, split some firewood, and then come back inside. We didn't work that hard at it. But if you're at the age where you don't think you can build a tiny house, then yeah, you're probably too old. I don't want to build a tiny house now because I'm burned out, but I think about having to climb up on that roof and different things, and if I started having huge back problems or knee problems or whatever, I wouldn't want to do it. If you can get past the first 3 years, I would say, then you're in good shape. But if you can't get past those first 3 years, then yeah, you might be too old. And I'm not trying to make this miserable for you. I'm just suggesting that you got to be able to get the things done so that when you retire, it's all there for you. So if you'll click this up next box to take you to a video where I was telling you a lawyer is taking legal action against me for being on YouTube. So I hope I can inspire you to seriously live your dreams. Thanks for watching.